Hi, everybody. I'm Riccardo Sai. I'm the founder of Storo, a visual storytelling agency, and I'm here today with Sophie Turton, which is a friend of mine and is a founder and director of Electric Peach. So, Sophie, welcome. How are you today?
Thank you. Thank you. I'm good. How are you?
I'm great. I'm looking forward to spring, which is not here yet. So hopefully, it's just a matter of days. But
I
Sophie,
mean, I have seen
yeah.
I've seen signs.
You
It's
see
coming.
inside. Okay, good. There is hope. There is hope. So, Sophie, tell us a bit more about you and what you do.
So I am the founder of Electric Peach, which is a brand storytelling social enterprise, specifically working with businesses that are committed to using their influence to create positive social and environmental impact.
Great, love it. And so Sophie, today we're gonna talk about a subject that we're both very passionate about, which is storytelling. How to use storytelling for change.
Mhm.
Specifically, the title of the day is "Stories That Move People to Action." So it's an open conversation. We're just gonna both of us will just join and say our thoughts about share our thoughts about the theme, and it's there's a lot to cover, isn't it? So let's see if half an hour is enough. Otherwise, we might have to record another one of these podcasts.
Yeah.
So first of all, so what do we mean with the stories that move? Sophie, what do you think?
Well, and I know this is something that you're already passionate about because that is your tagline for Storo. For me, stories that move means, for me, it's a lot about the emotional movement, i.e., we see something and it moves us emotionally, but also the actual action of moving. Because while stories are super important, and I really believe that they unite people in our differences, they connect people where we might have otherwise been totally separate. They are, for me, only really useful if they then drive people to take action. And particularly in the context of this conversation and in the context of businesses using storytelling as a way to drive social and environmental change, I think the movement part of it's really important because really what I'm seeing so much more, and we could maybe get into this later, but I'm seeing a lot of businesses using storytelling as a way to sell products and using the fact that people care a lot more or a lot more awake to purpose, what's happening in the environment, what's happening socio-politically, and it's just lip service and it doesn't actually mean anything and the actions aren't there to back it up. So for me it's really really important that while yes we need to tell better stories, we also need to make sure that our actions support the stories that we're telling and we're not just telling stories for the sake of
Yeah,
our own personal gain.
yeah, no, I agree. I think it's a also it's a bit of a buzzword, storytelling. So everybody understands, every businesses understand that the storytelling is important, but the key is first of all, as you said, so what stories you want to tell. There's different type of stories. There's your story, you as an entrepreneur, you as an individual. There's the story of your brand. What are your values? What is your mission? What are you trying to do with your brand? There's the story that you want to change as well. So you just mentioned now that this world is needs to change. So how can we change the narrative, the global narrative of the world? Well, here we go. So storytelling is a great power to. It's really it's an incredible, powerful tool to do that. And so there's different ways of using storytelling. And but I love what you said about the fact that stories can move in different ways. I mean, of course, yeah, it is part of my tagline as well as Storo. But I think you mentioned also the fact that the can stories can move you emotionally, and I think to me that's so crucial because that's how people really move themselves to actions, so in a way empowering businesses to really communicate at a more emotional level with the customers, but also with the employees as well. And I'm talking about internal communication as well. It's so important, so to create a culture of storytelling. So
Yeah.
yeah, very, very interesting.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. And what I think is really fascinating about Homo sapiens is that I think a lot of people, and myself included, thought that Homo sapiens were the ones that survived of all of the different Homo species because we were cleverer or we were better at fighting or something. Maybe we had better weapons. But the reason that we actually survived is because of our ability to tell stories and
Mm.
our ability to communicate wider than our immediate tribes. We were the only Homo species who could do that. So, storytelling is absolutely essential for human evolution.
Yeah.
And we can't help but to be inundated by some pretty horrific stories everywhere we look at the moment about
Mm.
injustices to the climate, injustices socially, and this is why, yes, it's a buzzword, it really is a buzzword,
Mm.
but for good reason, because it's become more crucial than ever for us to reconnect with one another. And
Mm.
storytelling, as far as I can see, is the most powerful way for us to do that, because it's literally the reason that we are here today.
Yeah, and you just touched on something that I'm really passionate about, which is the fact that storytelling are about connectivity, really. So, and
Yeah.
to me, it's we had this conversation before, but I find it really fascinating how stories can yes move us to do things and to think differently. They can move us to educate ourselves. They can move us to grow. They can inspire us so there's many million ways that the stories and storytelling can move us. But I absolutely love the fact that storytelling are about about emotions, about change as well, because I think that's one of the, as Heraclitus used to say, a Greek philosopher, pantare, so everything flows. So to me, storytelling, they are the closest way of really kind of representing what is life about. Life is about change. Life, everything changes. That's the only constant in life, that everything flows, everything changes. So in a way, storytelling are about transformation. They are about change. They are about a hero that going through the forest, going through a series of obstacles, through a series of encounters with antagonists and allies as well. He goes through a transformations. So in a way, I believe in this current time, we need change. We need change. The world has to change. So there's nothing better and more appropriate than storytelling to really empower people to change, because that's what we need right now. What do you think, Sophie?
Yeah, I agree. I really like that. And I speak a lot and have spoken a lot through my career about the importance of businesses being the change. And because for me, one of the most obvious ways we can change and quickly is if businesses change the way that they're behaving. And I absolutely agree that with that journey, businesses have used the structure of storytelling, have used, I mean, marketing, essentially, that it is storytelling, have used that to manipulate people. And that is just a fact, manipulate people into buying things they don't need, to not realizing the behaviors of things that are happening all around them. And now it's an opportunity to use those very same tools to do good and change the narrative, as you say, and still be profitable and still win, but taking it from the perspective of nobody wins unless everybody wins, which I think is a really key part for me about changing the narrative. No longer having the people, the hierarchy of where people sit, but having it be about everybody and it be about the earth as being a big part of that. And yeah, so I completely agree. It's such a crucial tool to really drive the change that we need right now.
Yeah, and also what is beautiful about stories is that they're quite universal. Um, there's a lot of common themes and common patterns in stories in stories all around the world. I mean, there's been a lot of research about that, and in a way, the current structures of stories, or at least Hollywood stories, more traditional linear stories, are based on the traditional stories, the fairy tales, the myths. And so I find really interesting, because in a way stories are is almost like a language that can really, as we said before, they really connect people with each other, and almost like help the world to feel more connected and more one world, which is, I think, one of the main issues that is facing humanity at the moment, which is exactly thinking about each individual's personal story, not as a separate from someone else's story, but really as part of a bigger and fascinating and beautiful story, which is the story of the world. So, in a way, stories can help to bridge that gap, I think. So,
Yeah, I know, I absolutely agree. And I think that's a really key point actually, is that there are so many different experiences in the world, and stories are the way to bridge that gap. They bridge the gap in understanding, bridge the sorry, my dog, as we knew would happen. Stop it. It's all
your dog,
right.
your dog has got a story as well. He wants to be a
She does
character.
have a story, bless her.
Oh,
Pardon.
it wants to be part of the story.
Um, She does. She always wants to be part of every story, bless her. She's very vocal. But I completely agree, because if you think, Lil, come on. Come on now, please. If you're gonna cut that out, aren't you, presumably? Yeah, so I'll go back to my original point before she distracted me. So yeah, I absolutely agree. I think one of the biggest challenges I think that we see today is in what is a global society is that we don't understand each other. So we're living in a huge kind of, for want of a better word, like melting pot of different cultures, but nobody's ever taken the time to go, this is this person's cultural perspective or individual perspective, this is where they've come from, and this is why they are the way they are, and this is their perspectives of life. And then as a result, there's so much tension between people because we don't understand each other. And for me, storytelling is the most powerful way of getting into somebody else's shoes. And I think that is why, when there was the Black Lives Matter movement, one of the biggest pieces of advice that was given to people like us who want to be allies to Black people, but maybe don't really understand how we can do that, was read as many books as you can that are written by authors of color, because that is the best way for you to understand the experience of people who maybe have a different experience of life than you, who definitely have a different experience of life than you. And for me personally, that has been a game changer. And I've read some of the most beautiful books that I've ever read, written by different authors from very, very different backgrounds, that I would never ever have had the access to seeing the world in that way
Yeah.
had I not read those stories. And it's the most beautiful way to build compassion and to, as we're saying, like move people in a way that you can get inside of their world and immerse yourself in that world. And to me, it's just a beautiful, beautiful thing.
Yeah, no, that's beautiful, and also I think what is really interesting about companies and brands is also really to challenge themselves to use storytelling in many new wonderful ways, because in a way we are used to um, to see a certain kind of storytelling used by brands, which is fine. But here's an opportunity, I think, to really push stories in a new directions. And there's all sort of many different ways that brands can use storytelling, but definitely there is an appetite for authentic stories as well. So and so really like not the kind of clean and pre-digested type of stories that perhaps we are used to see, especially when it comes to a certain type of advertising. But I like, for
Yeah.
example, the kind of advertising that is not only selling a product, but it makes you dream. It makes you, well, it moves you, as we said before a few times. Really inspire the audience to really think about their own humanity, and so they are thought provoking, and so not only they're selling a product, but they just adding an extra dimension to the stories, and they become commercial that not only they live for a few months until they disappear on the internet or on the TV, but they speak to you for a long time. And I think those are the stories that they travel the most, and they stay with our imagination for the longest. Are the stories that somehow they have an element of being uh, unresolved, somehow unfinished. So and the fact that they are unresolved and unfinished, and they're quite open, perhaps. They really challenge the audience, and whoever is listening or watching that story to really almost like fill the gap with their own personal stories.
Yeah.
I think those are the stories which I think they're more interested in. And I understand the brands maybe find it a bit more difficult to use storytelling in that way, but I think that's the power of stories, and I think brands should really embrace even more that aspect of storytelling, I think.
Yeah, yeah, I agree. And I think when brands involve their audiences in the telling of the story,
Mm.
it's a really powerful thing, because the one side of it is that we can then connect with people in a way that we couldn't otherwise when we read stories that are very different from our own, but have elements that we can empathize with. And then there's the other side where we start to see people who we really resonate with, whose stories are being represented by brands. And that, I mean, that is the fundamental basis of influencer marketing. It's seeing myself in another person that is then being kind of a representative of that brand. And I personally am not a massive advocate of influence marketing unless it's authentic, and driven by a cause. But it does just go to show the impact of having regular people, and their stories out there by brands, and including that narrative in your own telling of your own story. And I'm really interested specifically because we can look at big businesses who have nailed brand storytelling, and we wouldn't necessarily advocate for the way that they've done business. So, in the context of business and social and environmental justice, why do you think it's really important that people tell, or businesses tell, better stories?
Well, I think is a um, well, I think that I come from the 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 basic um uh, the my point is basically that the world has to change. So it doesn't mean that it's wrong. I think the world is the world. But I was actually listening to David Attenborough yesterday on a short clip that someone shared with me, and it was talking about the fact that I think something like 95% of mammals on Earth are actually humans. So we are the predominant species, like mammal species on Earth, and something like 60% of birds are actually chickens, or like or, there are also dogs on. suspense. There is also there are also a lot of dogs on Earth, and dogs are
There are too many
they
dogs.
are also mammals as well. So no, but there's like 60 or 70% or something, like an incredible number of birds are actually domesticated birds. I mean, they are like chickens and turkeys, etc. So meaning really that we as humans and what we need to survive on this earth had a huge impact
Yeah.
on animals. So that has to change. I have no idea how we can change those numbers, but I think that has to change. So, as we said before, because storytelling are about change, that's when I think storytellings are so important, because they can really help us to change people. And because at the end of the day, businesses have to play their own part, and I agree with you that it's so important that they get involved with on all sort of um, ways to really reshape the world, because that's what we need at the moment. But also I think people, individuals, all of us, we need to change our behavior. We need to change the way we think. We need to change the way we relate ourselves to other people. We need to change the way we relate to the environment, not as something separate from us, but as something integral to our well-being. So our well-being is reflected in the environment. The well-being of the environment is reflected on us. So that's why narratives and stories are so important, I think. And so there's a lot of work to do, but I think hopefully people like us can inspire also brands to start changing um, their stories, and also um, empowering those brands and those companies to really um, uh, become protagonists in this change that we need.
I love that. I love the idea of the brands becoming the protagonists. And I think for me, the reason that I'm so passionate about businesses telling better stories is, first of all, because of the influence that businesses have. Even if you are just a one person business, you have huge influence in how you choose in your supply chain, in how you treat your contractors, if you've got employees, how you treat your employees. Every single action that we make as individuals has a ripple effect. And as businesses, that ripple effect is just, by the nature of business, much more expansive, has much more ripples attached to it. And so that's one of the reasons that I'm really passionate about that. But also, I'm passionate because businesses have a platform. People are listening, people are watching. We live in a capitalist society, and that just is what it is. It's not good or bad, it just is. And
Mm,
as a result, businesses are far more powerful even than governments are, and
mm,
have far more say in how we live our lives. And through the changes that businesses make, that has a ripple effect on how people behave, and the consumer behavior, how the consumer buying habits, which has a huge impact on everything. So that's for me where the hope lies. I agree with you. It's really important for individuals to act and to be aware. And I think that happens when the businesses and the brands around us also make those changes. And what's
yeah,
exciting to me, because I've been in this space working with social enterprises and profit-driven organizations who focus on creating impact through their products and services for about 10 years now, like way before purpose was cool or a buzzword. And what is exciting to me is how many more genuine businesses are really excited and committed to being that change.
yeah,
And it unites us, doesn't it? In that, like, our story is, we really care about the potential for businesses to make a change in the world, and that unites us. And then we find others who have a similar story, and that unites us further. And the more that we come together, the more of an impact we make in our ripple effect.
yeah. No, that's beautiful, Sophie. I agree, and I think it's about also shifting perspective on how you do business. I think is um, for me, that's why I mean, it could be a bit controversial what I'm saying, but I think is a um, the the duty of a I mean, of course, Patagonia is always Patagonia, so we take that as a great example in a way. But it's almost like I think businesses should really move away from thinking about their competitors as competitors, because of course, there are competitors. Patagonia is competing with so many other brands, similar brands to what they do, but it's almost like their purpose is actually quite similar to what is driving other businesses. So to me, when it comes to communication and storytelling, in a way, it's almost like you want to inspire your competitors as well to be as good as you, but without really thinking about them as competitors, but really as allies. So talking about storytelling, you have
Hmm.
antagonists and you have allies. The problem is the same. So the world has to change. The world is slowly dying. We need more allies. So so we need more people that are really walking our path, hand in hand with us, and in a way kind of building a culture of shared storytelling or shared purpose. I think is so vital, it's so important. And so in a way communicating why you're doing as a brand, and who you're doing it for, your mission, your values, your why, is so important because it can really inspire not only people, not only customers, but governments and other brands as well. So the more the better.
Absolutely. And a really good example of this is there is a woman who's a head teacher who on Twitter, I was just looking at it before coming on today, who's used Twitter to galvanize people to action around Ofsted and how the impact of Ofsted and the kind of way that our schooling system in the UK has gone, off the back of another head teacher committing suicide from the back of an Ofsted inspection. And this woman on her own has galvanized multiple head teachers and gained attention from the national press by saying, I'm not going to stand for this anymore. We need to tell better stories. We need to change the way that our education system is going. And this just goes to show, like, if when one of us finds the courage, because a lot of it is courage, to stand up and find our voice and be heard, then we open up the gates for everyone who's been silently feeling the same to also go, well, actually, no, my story matters too. And I'm going to stand up and I'm going to speak my story and speak my truth. And like, I feel like historically there's been a disconnect between social storytelling and business, which has always sort of been in this sort of professional, disconnected from humanity kind of world. Now business is changing and it's becoming very much connected with humanity and social and cultural shifts. And that's a really exciting opportunity because there is an appetite for it and there is an opportunity for us to really be allies for our audiences and
Yeah,
what we stand for.
absolutely. No, that's fantastic. I totally agree with you. And also, there's so many ways of telling stories these days. So in a way, three the since the beginning of social media, but almost like now we are beyond, because we start talking about the metaverse, virtual reality. So in a way, we are immersed into a storytelling culture, and I'm not sure the brands are really making the most of the millions of ways that you can use storytellings. And of course, where I'm coming from, I tell stories visually, using sounds when it comes to films and images, or when it comes to photography, and it's just a static image. But I think now is the time really to embrace. I think the emotional stories, the one that really talk
Mm.
to people heart to heart. And I think that's also why I was since the first time we met. I know you always been very very sincere and honest about your personal stories, And that to me was one of the reasons why I thought, wow, Sophie is such an incredible person, because you really embrace your incredible story that I'm not going to share now, of course, but I think as an entrepreneur as well, embracing your story, your problems, and your um the all the obstacles that you face during your professional life, but also personal life. Um, it's incredible. It's a gift. Stories are about being generous with people and kind of sharing with compassion, as you said before, with people something that is really true for you. And I think that shift,
Yeah.
I think, is necessary for brands. It's important.
I absolutely agree. And I think in the context of that, it's about making room for humanity. I think, and as I said before, like this whole idea of what professionalism should be, everybody has some kind of an experience with the corporate world, and very few are positive, I would say. And it doesn't have to be that way. Like, it really doesn't have to be that way. It's like we're all trying to fit ourselves into boxes that don't actually fit anyone. And for me, when you have influence and you have created something for your life that people look up to and say, oh, this is what success looks like, it's even more important, from my perspective, to be honest about the challenges and the failures that took to get there, because it's not realistic that you can just, here I am and I've got it all sorted. Like, that's not real. And I personally want to use my life and my platform and my voice to help others to see that anything is possible for themselves. Like, that for me is so important.
Yeah, and also I think what is beautiful about stories, as a as a framework to live better lives as well. And there's a famous book by Joseph Campbell about storytelling, the hero's journey, really. And and to
Mhm.
me, I mean, storytelling it's also about empowering people, individuals, humans, to become the heroes of their own lives, and almost like to
Yeah,
write the script of their life. Bearing in mind, as we
yeah,
said before, that script will always change. So you get to the end of the film, or you get the end of the story, and there's a new story starting again, and that
hmm,
could happen in a matter of minutes. You can change your story
yeah,
instantly if you want. So in a way, I think it's a great framework. It's a great. It's almost like a philosophy, if you want, on really empowering people to become the heroes of their own narratives. And I think the more people become aware of that, the bigger the change. So I don't know. Maybe I have a bit of a spiritual approach about storytelling, but I'm Buddhist as well, so maybe that transfer to my passion for storytelling. But I think the key is really there, and absolutely, I agree with you with the fact that the businesses should really use storytellers in that wonderful as well, but in that wonderful way, but also individuals as well, because. Individuals have also they also have the power to inspire other people as well. So we need to be together in this change. The more
yeah.
people enlighten into that, the better, I think. So,
I absolutely agree.
yeah,
Um, yeah, I completely agree, and I love the idea of creating your own narrative, and I think so much of it is giving yourself the permission to be the hero of your own story. And so many, especially businesses that have been created for a specific purpose, like social enterprises, there's a lot of there's a lot of good that drives that, and I think they're the ones that struggle the most to tell their story, because it almost feels too vain, or I don't want to look like I'm bragging, or like I'm worried that I might accidentally be purpose washing or greenwashing. And those are the people, and I'm sure that there are a lot of people in both of our networks who might be watching this who fit into that category. And if that's you, I really, really implore you to embrace your story, because it really matters. And when you start to tell it, you'll be amazed by the impact that it has on other people and the permission that it gives them to then tell their story as well.
Yeah,
I'm really conscious of time, so should we
exactly. Yeah,
summarize this by just what are kind of key tips for somebody who is really interested in telling their own stories in a way that moves people to action, but isn't really sure what they can do?
yeah, uh, yeah. I'll couple of things for me. I think is a heart-to-heart conversations through stories. I think is crucial. Really honestly and sincerely talking to your customers. I'm talking about brands, but of course, it could be not just brands and companies doing that. So really kind of being very sincere about, very transparent through the stories that the brand share. And I think and really also thinking about, are you really talking to your audience? Do you care about them? Because I think a lot of time you see your customers as almost like as a product, as someone that is going to buy products from you. But actually, we are we as well brands that should really empower customers to become more active in society as well. And I think and as we said before, almost like becoming the heroes of their own life, or more aware of their actions as well. So I don't know, this is just a couple of things. What do you think, Sophie?
Yeah, I agree. The first thing that I always say to clients that I work with to help them develop their story is, first of all, their story definitely matters, but actually it's far more about their customer's story. And in the context of a social enterprise, it's also about your community's story, the people that you
Yeah,
exist to help in some way. What's their story? And one of the things that I think we need to be really careful of, especially in the West, is not assuming anything about somebody else's story, and really taking the time to ask people and facilitate opportunities for them, safe spaces for them to tell their own story and not try to tell somebody else's story without having involved them in that narrative. The other thing that I think is really, really important in this is authenticity, which means being honest about your failures. Don't don't try and pretend like you've got it all sorted. There is literally not a blueprint for the kind of the route that we need to take to change our approach to how we live in the world, because we live in a system that was created 150 years ago and isn't fit for purpose anymore, and there is no blueprint or there is no map for where we go forward, so we're bound to make mistakes. Really try to avoid hyperbole and sweeping statements, because for me personally, as soon as I see a business claiming, especially environmentally, that they've got it all sorted, I know that that's complete rubbish, because there is no all sorted, even the ones that have got as good as it can get. So it's just about being honest and going, I'm doing my best, but there's still so much more I can be doing. And
yeah,
with that, in terms of involving others in the telling of your story, which is really crucial part of this, we're allowing everybody to be involved. We're not making ourselves look like we're some kind of pinnacle of excellence and you're just down there. And it's about, we're in this together and we're learning from each other and we're growing together and we're creating the map together. And like, for me, if businesses can shift from the I perspective to the we perspective, that is like the huge step forward in being this change that we've been talking about needing to see.
wow, what a conversation, Sophie. I almost felt emotional at the end. That call to action was great. You nailed it. We should really think about transcribing all these and publish a book, because there's a
Yeah,
lot of
I would love that.
there's a lot, isn't there? I mean, I personally would like to rewatch it and listen better to what I said, because sometimes I say things that I'm not even aware, and especially listening to you as well, because I love listening to you. I mean, so many incredible insights. So anyway, I'm sure we'll do more of this, and we'll find different ways of
Yeah.
combining our our knowledge and our passion for storytelling for our audience. But I just wanted to thank you, Sophie, and it's been great, and I really look forward to, I don't know, whatever will happen in the future. So thank you, Sophie, and thank you everybody for listening and or watching these.
Thank you for having me, Rick. And yes, as Rick says, thank you for watching. Please connect with us. We are really passionate about knowing our audiences and our communities. So yeah, please get in touch, and yeah, thank you for watching.
Thank you. Bye. Ciao.
Bye.
Okay.